Zweig Group invites all AEC industry leaders to the 2024 AEC Small Business and Entrepreneurship Forum, the premier event for small firms in the AEC sector. Experience innovative strategies and insights on May 21st, crafted by Zweig Group's industry experts. Engage in keynotes and interactive sessions focused on recruitment, retention, and business growth. Join Zweig Group for this unique networking opportunity and take your business to new heights. Secure your spot today and be part of the AEC industry's future. Visit ZWEIGGroup.com for more information. The Zweig Group team looks forward to welcoming you.
Welcome to the Zweig Letter Podcast, putting architectural, engineering, planning, and environmental consulting guru Mark Zweig's straight talk in your ear. Mark has more than 30 years of experience helping AEP and environmental firms thrive. And these podcasts help deliver his invaluable management, industry, client, and HR advice directly to you, free of charge. The Zweig Letter Podcasts let you develop professionally, wherever you are.
Hey everyone, and thank you for joining Zweig Group Media and the Zweig Letter exclusive interview series. With 25 years of continuous coverage of the design industry, the Zweig Letter is a consistent source of valuable information in an ever-changing marketplace. I am here again today with Mark Zweig. I've gotten him together for another podcast episode, and we're so excited to talk about one of the topics that comes up quite a bit in our office, and that's M&A. And so Mark recently wrote an article in the Zweig Letter, and that article was entitled, What I Have Learned About M&As in the Past Year. That was from the January 16th edition of the Zweig Letter. I think that's issue number 1183. You can check that out, and we'll provide a link to it at the end when we give you the show notes for this particular episode. But Mark, it's great once again to have you on the podcast, and again, as always, this podcast was created really just for you to share your knowledge and what you know about this industry, what you've learned over the last 37 plus years. And I know that you've had a lot of experience when it comes to mergers and acquisitions. Obviously, we've done them a lot here in this organization. You've consulted firms in the area of M&A transactions. We've had some other people on the Zweig Letter podcast, like George Christodoulou, that have done more transactions than we could even care to remember. But wanted to certainly hear from you in terms of what you are seeing as trends that are taking place when it comes to mergers and acquisitions in the design industry. I know a lot of firms are looking to obviously grow organically, but then for a lot of firms, they have to grow through acquisition or through a merger of sorts. And so why don't you talk just a little bit about what you're seeing and what you've experienced in the past year that may be different than what you noticed like over 15 or 20 years ago. And because this is not a video, you can't see that Mark is kind of trying to make me laugh as I do this opening monologue. So it's just like him to do that, but that's okay because we don't edit this stuff out. We want to be normal because that's just what we do. So we like to have fun here at Zweig Group as well. But Mark, thanks again for joining us. What do you have to say about that?
First, I just have to say, being interviewed by Randy is always like you feel like you've been on network TV or something, or Fresh Air or something.
Fresh Air.
He's so good at it.
Terry Gross.
No, the M&A. I mean, it's crazy how much activity there is. I mean, the majority of companies want to buy or sell. I've never seen a time like it.
Yeah.
So it's a red hot market for buyers and sellers.
Yeah.
Prices are up. Demand is up for companies. Expectations of sellers are up, in some cases completely unrealistic. Mm-hmm. Where do I start? I mean, as you said, I mean, we've done hundreds of these things in one way, shape, or form, either finding buyers for sellers or sellers for buyers, or doing the appraisals, or acting as a negotiation agent, or planning the integration post acquisition. I mean, we've done all these different things, helping with due diligence. It's very interesting. It's interesting work, and it certainly is a viable way for a company to grow if they have a consistent strategy that they follow as it relates to buying companies. Unfortunately, most don't have a consistent strategy, and most AE firms' decision-making processes are so convoluted and so slow that it puts them at a real disadvantage in the M&A business, because you got to act quickly, and you've got to be willing to take a risk sometimes with less than complete information, which again, we know is a tendency of engineers in particular. They always want more information.
You mean overanalyze?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You've never got enough information to make a decision. Well, you'll never make a decision because you'll never have enough information on a company you're trying to buy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and that, it's funny. What I think we should probably do is talk about, well, what do you see happening? I mean, lately I know, there's this talk of that there have been auctions that have taken place, and there are some, kind of nuanced ways that people are trying to do M&As. I've talked to a number of firms that kind of self-manage the M&A process themselves. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. But what do you, what new trends are you seeing in the space of mergers and acquisitions, especially in the design industry?
Well, we have seen some auctions recently where, we get this letter, or one of our clients gets a letter, and it describes a company and in a favorable light. Maybe it's a couple pages of information. If you want more on it, you have to sign an NDA, but they're going to be opening up all offers on such and such a date. And it's like, what? One of our clients, very good client we've worked with on several different transactions, they got one of these letters, and, they called me up and said, what do you, we're going to take a run at this thing.
Right.
And I'm like, are you sure you want to do that? There's going to be a lot of other firms. They said, yep, we're going to. And they ended up getting it.
Wow.
And it was a great company.
Wow.
Also, which is another, maybe it would seem shocking that a really good company would use that approach. I thought it was pretty arrogant, really. I mean, we're going to be opening offers on this date. That assumes somebody wants to make an offer based on the information they got. But they did.
Yeah, yeah.
And they ended up getting it.
Wow. So tell me this, just to piggyback on that particular story. Was there an organization or a company managing the overall process for that company?
No,
or
they do it themselves.
They did it themselves.
Yeah, they're very, very organized, and they have a very small team.
Okay.
That is led by the CEO.
Okay.
To buy other companies.
Okay.
And so they can vet them out quickly. They can analyze. They can come up with a value. They can come up with a deal structure. The CEO and mainly the CFO.
Right.
They have a model that they throw all the numbers into,
yep.
And they've got outside capital that they brought in for the purpose of buying other companies.
Okay.
They're just highly efficient.
Wow.
This is not like most companies.
Right.
It's like, well, we got 12 owners, and we've got an opportunity to look at this company. We'll hold in our board meeting in May. We can talk about whether or not we want to look at them. I'm like,
Yeah.
May, it's done.
Yeah,
I mean, everything's over.
Yeah, it's over.
You can't work like that. And, we want to meet all their partners, and their partners want to meet all our partners. Then we're going to have another meeting of partners. Nobody's even talked about the value yet.
Yeah.
And then someday you find out after like 6 meetings that the value expectation of the seller is so unrealistic that there's no possibility in hell that you're going to be able to put a deal together. Okay? I've seen that more than once.
So, and now that you bring that up, and just the fact that there's sometimes in these M&A transactions, there sometimes can be too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I remember you telling a story, and we may have mentioned this loosely in another earlier podcast, but one of your mentors, and one of your main mentors, Jerry Allen, you've talked about how, Jerry you would call him up with an opportunity, and he would literally get on a plane and go meet with the firm and make a decision right then and there.
It was crazy. Nobody was faster than him, or would jump on an opportunity faster than that guy.
Right.
So you could call him. He would call the client, the seller, right away.
Yeah.
And then he would be on a plane that day to go see him, and or that night. I mean, things move very quickly. And then 2 days later, he'd call me up and say, well, I just struck a deal to buy such and such.
And that was it.
And that was it.
That was it.
And,
Okay.
he had the same approach toward integration. It was very fast.
Yeah.
He wasn't a big fan of dragging things out. He'd say, let's just decide. Whoever wants to stay here can stay. Whoever wants to leave can leave. You're going to be on our policies, our benefits, our name. Everything's going to happen. That's
This is it. Yeah.
It's over. We're going to go. And that was one of the reasons why he liked to buy troubled companies, because he said they're glad to see us
Yeah.
when we show up, as opposed to really successful companies where all we're going to do is like make their life miserable.
Yeah.
Because we're changing grandma's recipe.
Right.
The unsuccessful ones know they don't have grandma's recipe.
Right.
It's not working. They're
Yeah.
going out of business. They got major problems. They're much more open to make changes.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Doesn't mean they're bad people either. There are plenty of good companies and good people out there that just don't know how to make money in this business.
Yeah. Or they did before and maybe they don't now. So
Yeah.
some
Times
people
change.
lose their way. So,
Yeah, sure,
Some
exactly.
people lose their way. So what would you say to the CEO or leader of an organization now that may feel kind of hamstrung by his board of directors? He's got a real mission to go out and try to do a merger or an acquisition, but he just feels like he's hamstrung by everybody around him that is kind of holding him back from that perspective. What advice would you give to that leader?
Well, he needs to have a very small team of people, probably somebody with a good operations background, the CFO, and him or herself.
Okay.
And they need to be authorized by their board to basically pursue acquisitions and take them all the way down to the purchase and sale signing.
Okay.
At that point, the board can approve the purchase and sale agreement.
Okay.
If you want to do it at an LOI level or MOU, that's letter of intent or memorandum of understanding.
Yeah.
You could make that a requirement that the board sign off on, although that's going to slow things down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Small group of people don't have to get approval until it's done. Until it's ready to sign. That's sort of what I would be advocating. And if they need, good advice, I would be glad to suggest, someone as far as either a consultant or an attorney,
Right.
who can sort of guide them through the process and if necessary, come talk with their people to explain to them the sort of whys and wherefores of how you do this stuff.
Right. Right.
So they, to deal with their questions and misconceptions before they even get into the process. So once they are in the process, they can move through it quickly.
Yeah. And you bring up a very, very important distinction is that just because an attorney, if they are not an attorney that is familiar with M&A transactions, they're probably not a good person to review a bunch of documents for you pertaining to an M&A transaction. I mean,
God, no.
And that's the same for a consultant. If you just call any consultant that's just doing small business management consulting, doesn't necessarily make them an M&A expert. So, that would be an area that you would certainly encourage people not to cut corners in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's absolutely. You need a specialist.
Yeah.
And to get anybody other than a specialist is insane. And so when you need something's wrong with your health and you have cancer, you don't go see a heart doctor.
Right.
Or your general practitioner.
Right.
You got to get people that know what they're doing. Attorneys, they're all specialized.
Yeah.
If they don't have experience in this stuff, they're going to mess it up. I don't know what else to say. Every single time.
Yeah.
They'll screw it up.
Yeah.
So, I've learned this. I get calls from people, because my other business is a home renovation, commercial, residential contracting and development company. I get calls constantly, or emails or texts from people saying, "Can you recommend a good home handyman?"
Yeah.
Or my fellow professors, and I'll go, "What do you need them for?" "Well, I need to replace the tile floor in my kitchen." Why are you calling a handyman? Call
Right.
the tile floor person who installs
yeah.
tile floors.
Yeah.
Well, I need to change my faucet in my kitchen. Why are you calling a handyman for that? Why not call a plumber?
Right.
They'll do
Yeah.
it right the first time.
The first time. Yeah.
I've been in a million houses that have been worked on by a million handymen, and they never do it right.
Yeah.
Same thing here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
They don't know what they're doing. They'll screw it up. You
Yeah.
can't go to your regular business attorney. Then most of them have had zero or very, very little experience in buying and selling companies.
Right.
And they're going to be alarmist. They're going to miss things. They're going to overreact to things that aren't problems. It's just bad.
Yeah.
Get the experts.
Yeah. And I know you've seen some deals I'm sure you've seen some deals fall through because of a lack of an expert being involved, maybe on the other side of the table with a transaction that you're doing. But talk about some of the unrealistic expectations that sellers have in the M&A process. What do you think about that in terms of, what have you seen lately?
I think the biggest problem that we have, it's the media, and people learn or see what another company sells for. Maybe it's it's a high tech company.
Right.
I saw WebEx sold for 40 times revenue or something.
Right.
Who gives a what?
Right.
You're not WebEx.
Right.
There's nothing like there's no similarity between you and WebEx.
Right.
That's one problem. And then the second problem is there is a group of flim-flam artists, snake oil salespeople that travel around from city to city, and they put on free seminars in unlocking the value of your business.
Right.
And they advertise these things on the radio and TV. They send letters out. You go, you get a nice meal. It's at a nice hotel. It's not at the Days Inn or the Motel 6. It's held at the nice hotel in town.
Right.
And they get people together, and they basically, inflate their ideas of what the company's worth. I had a guy call me a couple years ago. He said, he's got a 16-man MEP firm, and it does $2 million a year, and his business partner thinks it's worth $4 million. I said, where in the world would he ever get a number like that? Well, he went to one of these seminars. The guy told him we're worth $4 million. Okay, well, it's bullshit. Okay.
Yeah.
The reason why they do that is they then sign them up under a program to market their company for so much per month.
Right.
And they never sell anybody, or rarely do, but they get so much per month out of a lot of companies, all paying them, $25,000 to do a pitch book and $5,000 a month retainer, or $10,000 or $7,500 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
To represent them, and that's how they make their money. They don't make it actually selling the company. So they create a totally unrealistic expectation that can't be met. And I hate it when I run into those scenarios. It's very difficult to convince those people that they've been sold a bill of goods, that the
Right.
company's not worth that, and nobody's going to pay that for them.
Yeah. Wow. Well, yeah. That obviously that's always going to be out there, and people, people will tell you what you want to hear, I think, and that's especially in this area of what your company is worth or what you can get from the transaction. So, what can sellers expect after a successful transaction? In the instance where a seller is, can they expect to have to hang around for a while after the fact, or
They're going to have to.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to buy that company and just let them walk out the door. I shouldn't say nobody. If you've got a really strong company and it's got 10 owners and you're not the CEO, then it's possible that you may be able to get out of the company.
Right.
But it's most of the time they want people to stick around for minimum 2-3 years.
Yeah. Just to
That's part of the deal.
Okay.
Even if it's not full time, it may be a declining commitment level over that time period. Sometimes longer. Many times sellers don't want to get out. The sale is not an exit plan. It's more of a growth strategy.
Right.
To team up with another organization that's got better distribution or more capital than they have.
Yeah.
And so it's not an exit. It's simply a transition and recapitalization.
Yeah.
That's just a different way to look at it.
Okay. So you also said one other thing that really struck me, and it takes me back to when I look at buying real estate, but you said sometimes the terms may be more important than the price you pay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can tell you I'll pay you 2 times revenue for your company, but it's going to be paid out over 10 years and it's based on your profitability.
Right.
Well, that's not the same deal
Right.
as I'll write you a check today.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a huge, huge difference.
Yeah.
And every other deal is somewhere in between those.
Okay.
And so you really, that's a major distinction.
Yeah.
And you can't deny it. The terms could be very critical. How much of it is going to be paid up front, or how much of it is non-contingent on your performance?
Right.
I mean, even if it's not paid up front, non-contingent there's a huge difference there.
And I'm kind of putting you on the spot now, but in all of the transactions that you've done or been involved in, what is maybe one of the more unique terms that you have seen put out that got accepted?
Jeez, unique terms.
Yeah.
I had one where a guy had to have the buyer. The company was based in Texas, but he wanted to move to San Diego. He wanted to move to La Jolla. And they had to agree to open up an office for him in La Jolla.
So he could move there.
Him there. And they
really?
did.
And they did it.
Yep, they did.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So that's, and from
and the whole reason for that he told me, he was from South Africa. And he did not want his daughters marrying Texans, he told me. He had 3 daughters. He said, I don't want my daughters marrying Texans.
That's it.
For God's sakes. They're so crude.
That's not good. Well,
And,
that's unfortunate. And we have a lot of Texas listeners, so please, guys, don't hold this against us. If you're
It's not our opinion.
Yeah, if you're in the great state of Texas right now, driving around listening to this podcast, just understand those weren't the words of Mark Zweig. So.
I have a daughter who lives in Texas. I had another one who was born there.
Yeah,
so relax.
Exactly. It's quite fun.
But it was funny that's what the guy said.
That was his reasoning.
Yes, that was his reasoning for wanting to go to La Jolla, and he liked La Jolla because the weather there was the closest to Johannesburg.
Yeah.
It's like 72 degree.
Year round. Yeah.
San Diego weather is perfect. If you're in the right place in San Diego, you go inland a little bit, it gets hot. But, when you're right there in the right spot, it's like the best really weather nice. In the world.
Absolutely. So that's
probably the most unusual request I ever had.
That's very cool. So, well, I mean, I know we have a great team here doing M&A. We've actually added to that team recently, and I think it's probably the strongest that it's ever been. In terms of the capabilities of Jamie Claire Kaiser, who's the director of M&A, and the rest of the team that she's built, and then working with you and Chad and the rest of the folks here at Zweig Group. I mean, we certainly are more than capable to work with people from an M&A perspective, but I think if nothing else, to bend our ear about situations that you may be encountering if thinking about going through an M&A. We've probably seen it, or we've probably done it or talked about it and helped people through it. So we'd love to chat with you if you have questions about mergers and acquisitions, if you want to put your firm on the block, if you want to go out and find another firm that you'd like to acquire or merge with, certainly reach out to us, and we would love to talk with you about that. And certainly Mark has a lot of great information and even more stories than what you heard on this podcast today. So, Mark, I want to thank you again for sharing with us this week, and we really appreciate it. Folks, I want to remind you that you can get Mark's no holds barred advice on a weekly basis in the Zweig Letter and our sister publication, Civil and Structural Magazine. Because you are a podcast listener, we want to thank you with a free gift. And I'll share a little bit more about that in a second. As a reminder, all Zweig Group media programs like this one are available both in podcast and video format, free for download on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube, just to name a few places. We'd like to thank you for listening or watching this podcast episode by offering you a free copy of the Zweig Letter and a year subscription. Yes, you heard me say that right. A year subscription of Civil and Structural Magazine. Just visit free tzl.zweiggroup.com. A link to all of this information, including contact information from Mark, will be in our show notes. And we would love it if you would share this podcast with a friend. Hey, I'm Randy Wilburn, and you've been listening to Zweig Group Media, part of Zweig Group. Remember, we exist to make you more successful. Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this Zweig Letter podcast. We hope that you can apply Mark's no-holds-barred advice to your daily professional life. For a free 6-week subscription to the Zweig Letter, please visit freetzl.zweiggroup.com to gain more wisdom and inspiration, in addition to information about leadership, finance, HR, and marketing your firm. Subscribe today.